This is a book review of How to Win the Premier League by Ian Graham. Ian Graham was employed by Liverpool FC as the Director of Research from around 2012 until about 2023. His primary job was to find players that would improve the Liverpool sides. He analysed lots of data, used statistics, looked at models of play, and tried to analyse if a player would benefit the Liverpool sides and how they might fit in to the tactics and the strategy of the team as a whole. He would look at data and metrics that are perhaps not obvious to the average football fan. One of the things he looked for example, was possession value. So rather than just looking at how many passes a player completes during a match and looking at the success rate of those passes, he would look at the quality and the value of the player's ability to pass and increase the chances of the team scoring. So a player might have a very high pass completion rate if they're passing backwards or if they're passing to the sides. But what really matters, what's going to make a difference, is players who can pass the ball into dangerous areas, into tight spaces, which assist their front players and increase the chances of them scoring. He would also look at something called expected goals, which is an indication of the quality of a shot. And those two metrics are not obvious or easy to spot when watching a game of football, but upon closer inspection, looking under the surface and analysing data retrospectively, it's possible to analyse the performance of players in a way that doesn't or isn't too affected by the results. One of the reasons why Liverpool FC employed Jurgen Klopp was because it was obvious to Ian Graham that Jurgen Klopp was doing a fantastic job as the manager of Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga, even though in Jurgen Klopp's last season at Borussia Dortmund, they didn't perform very well in the league. Their standing overall wasn't as good as it had been. Jurgen Klopp actually won the league with Borussia Dortmund with a very young side playing a high pressing style of play, gegenpressing or heavy metal football as he likes to call it. And the research department behind the scenes at Liverpool FC could see that Jurgen Klopp was doing a fantastic job. It just happened to be the case that in many matches they were unlucky, they were unfortunate not to have won many matches, and this affected their standing in the league. One of the things that Annie Duke spoke about in her book, Thinking in Bets, was to try to avoid resultism. That is to say, paying too much attention to the results or the outcome rather than the process. And a team can play extremely well 5 times against the same opposition, win 4 and lose 1, just because of chance-based events, unlucky situations. The VAR could not be working properly, could be a bad decision from the referee, and they just so happen to lose. And so thinking probabilistically, trying to increase the chances over time should pay off, it should work. And this definitely was the case with the Liverpool teams that Ian Graham was in the process of making, and was a key architect behind the signing of Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk, Robertson, Matip. Many of these players were actually undervalued by the transfer market. In the case of Mo Salah, for example, he was perceived to have fouled at Chelsea. He didn't get many minutes under Jose Mourinho, mainly because they had players like Eden Hazard there who were a little bit older, more established. Salah at the time was only 20, 21, 22, and he moved to Roma in the Serie A after Chelsea. But many Premier League teams thought he kind of fouled and he didn't really prove himself at Chelsea. And so this led to a great opportunity for a club which was analysing the raw data, looking at how effective he was on the right wing. And Ian Graham says that it was clear to him that Mo Salah was already one of the best right wingers in Europe and had huge potential going forward. And he breaks down a number of the transfers that Liverpool made, which led to the fantastic team that they built that was able to win the league in, I think, 2020 and also the Champions League in around 2019. Those two achievements perhaps more notable than they seem because they were competing against one of the best Premier League teams of all time, Guardiola's Manchester City, unbelievably successful team, very dominant, similar style of Gegen pressing and taking Johan Cruyff's approach to football in having total football, everyone contributing, trying to overwhelm the opposition's box, possession, pass and move. The two had a similar style. In fact, Liverpool were able to beat Manchester City, who was spending vast sums of money on players. Speaks volumes for the process and of what Ian Graham and his team were doing behind the scenes. It was a really wonderful book to read, entertaining, well written, fun, enjoyable, and there's a lot of science, cognitive science, and ways of improving one's decision-making ability by avoiding some of the biases and the errors of judgment and emotional thinking, and just sticking to the facts, looking at the raw data and getting different viewpoints. The points that he makes that I love in this book is that if the scouting department, the data analysis department, the manager and the financial department were all in agreement, that would strongly indicate that they've got a player who it really is going to benefit the team. He talks about instances of disagreement before Jurgen Klopp arrived, where the manager before Jurgen Klopp didn't always agree with the data analysis, and that led to the signing of players which perhaps didn't quite fit a coherent and cohesive team as a whole. So one can learn a lot from the book. Do check it out. Thank you.